Hi, this is Obi from Los Angeles, and this is my assignment for week number 5 of Introduction to Music Programming. I'm going to talk about the phaser and flanger effects and how these sound on drums. So in Ableton, I have a drum loop loaded up, and right now I have the feedback down on the phaser, which basically makes it just sound like the dry signal. So this is what it sounds like as a dry signal just coming through the speakers. When I increase the feedback, then you can kind of start to hear the different frequencies emerge. So now that the feedback is at almost 100%, when I move the frequency, which is the x-axis here, you can start to hear certain frequency sounds pop out of the mix. So that's sort of a filter, that's without any movement. So what I'm going to do now is adjust the low frequency oscillator setting here, and that will allow the filter to move around and we can get that kind of moving effect. So I'm going to put the frequency back in the middle here and then adjust the LFO. So now that we have that movement, you can also adjust the rate, which shows how fast that moves. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is the flanger, and this is a little bit different than the one we looked at in the lessons, but Ableton's flanger has a few more settings that you might notice here. There's a high-pass filter built in, and then also the sounds get a little bit more extreme. So if I keep the feedback at about 50% here, you'll notice if I adjust the delay time, this works pretty much like the comb filter that we discussed. So what I can actually do though is turn up the feedback, and when the feedback gets up higher, we get the tones that we discussed when we have a relatively short delay time but high feedback. And then when I adjust that and I change the LFO, we can get some really interesting noises. So although it doesn't really sound natural, using drums and using some effects like the phaser and the flanger, you can get some really interesting noises that maybe wouldn't even sound like drums. It's more of a melody or a synthesizer. Thanks a lot for reviewing, and I look forward to reviewing all of your submissions.